Okay, I commented on this interview by Charlie Rose with Lisa Randall, who is the top physicist in particle physics and gravity and all this business. And I made the statement that in 1 minute I could show that everything that she based her assumptions on is wrong. And I did. If she's working, is saying that Einstein is correct and Einstein was wrong. Light can easily be accelerated, as you see here. This is light from a pulse red laser. Very simple, one little tiny particle beam concussing through the air in a dark room. Very simple procedure here. Approaching a venturi slit, two metal pins that create an airplane wing, forcing these particles, which light is a particle, to concuss with each other and to force themselves into each other's regions, creating plasma, which is, they are all forced to be together and they do not want that. So we are seeing light accelerated. I guarantee she is not, well, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think she's allowing for light to be accelerated. I don't think she's probably accepting that light is a particle, and I can obviously see it and you can see it. And another thing I doubt if she will accept is that in the universe there is nothing more than a ton of ether. These little white particles are what is known as ether. They are free electrons. They float around through space, emitted from stars and luminous sources as light. They don't interact with each other, but once they're here, in the vacuum of space, but when they collide with something, just as you see here, they glow. That's what light is. As they glow, this is such a concussive wave at the venturi that it is literally a bomb, and it explodes back with this reverse magnetic wave, causing these particles to glow, which are ether. They are free-floating electrons that are in the air, and they come to us from the sun through the atmosphere, or through the vacuum that they call it, of space, which is loaded with these tiny particles, and they are particles. They collect on you as static. If you are more attractive in the air than the air is to them, they primarily hold on to water molecules. When it's dry, you will get them. You will discharge them to ground. This is everything here I'm talking about. I could prove and I can show, and I have pictures and I can demonstrate. And let's go on and do a little more demonstrating, showing, and picturizing. All right, everybody knows that a nuclear explosion goes straight up off the ground, straight up. And there's always a mushroom ball that pulls everything back into itself. Now, if you want to read all this, it's very interesting, and it explains exactly what I'm saying. They call it neutron bombs, and they call them, atomic bombs. Well, there's nothing more than when that goes off. There's nothing more than minuses and positives there. The positives are crushed together with the negatives. The negatives force themselves apart. They fly off as the light and the heat and all that business, and then the positive core is now propelled from Earth, just like a rocket ship. Get away from me, because you are positive. I'm positive. The Earth will always take electrons, but it does not want positive things that don't have any electrons. And this will be the only time something will be without electrons, is because you forced them all into their regions and they exploded, just like you saw in that Venturi. This is a crazy thing. Somebody understands this. It's talking about the effects and how it's going to affect the radar. That's what they're worried about, is get their radar working. It says the effects of the effects of the radiation falls off both in strength and the affected frequencies as the fireball cools and the electrons begin to reform onto the free nuclei. They're free electrons. There's free electrons. The electrons begin to reform onto the free nuclei. It's exactly what I'm saying. Only the free nuclei is only positive particles. The negatives are coming back in and crushing into them again. And they create enormous amounts of glow in the fireball as it goes up, because it's reforming itself. They understand this. Why don't they look? See right here, look. The free electrons in the fireball affect radio waves. The free electrons, they're going flying off. But now, not only that, because this is a positive and negative mass. There is no nucleuses. That was kind of a silly thing because they just fall apart. But the more negatives you have exceeding the positives, the more unstable the whole thing becomes, because the cores become isotopes and they have taken on extra electrons into the nuclear core, which they don't want. They're stable at a certain number of electrons and a certain number of protons, and that's stability. You exceed that with one or the other, and it's primarily electrons, you end up having an unstable core, and it's radioactive. It spits out these little radio electrons. It's electrons. The electrons are leaving. There's too many of them. Get out of here. Bing! They go flying off, and you say, well, that's electron, that's radiation. Now, sometimes the nucleus part, which we call nucleons, because there's nothing more than protons crushed with electrons, it may break apart part of the protons. I don't know. And that may be, then you got a little bar magnet flying out. And that's what bar magnets are, is in the nuclear explosion, the atomic bomb, you have all the electrons go first. They're gone because they've crushed each other's regions and they come popping out of there like popcorn. Then what follows that is the bar magnets of the chunks of the nucleuses, which is not just positives and negatives together. And those are serious because there's a lot more impact when you get into that range in the core, it appears. And I can't really account for electrons because electrons appear to be almost nothing in weight. They claim they're 0.00055 atomic mass units. I can go along with that. That's fine. There's something there. I know there's something there. Now, then you go up into your proton, I believe, is 1 atomic mass unit. Your neutron that they thought was a little excessive of 1 atomic mass unit. So that gives you, I'm saying those neutrons are not neutrons in the core, those are electrons. So now you have an excessive negativeness in the core because the mass of the neutron was higher than the mass of the proton, so that means if you stuck the two of them together, you would have an excessive negativeness. And as you go up in molecules, in atoms, they end up having excessive, what they thought was neutrons, which means excessive electrons. So now you have an unstable core. It's not unstable, but it's spread out more because there's more negatives able to surround more positives. So it becomes more complex, but primarily it's more negatives, and that's what they say. They're isotopes. They're additional. They thought they were neutrons, but they're not. So going past this, we understand there's free electrons. They do too. They do too. And there's no reason to have neutrons. It's crazy. The neutrons would fall off and they'd roll away. Oh, they got gluons, they got weakened positive and negative forces and attractive, inner sanctum, all kinds of things they come up with. To try to justify the fact it's wrong. It's wrong. You can't fix it. Something that's wrong. You just can't fix that. You have to start over and say, let me think about electron flooding. What if it flooded electrons? It just makes sense. And then all you have to do is look at the rising of the nuclear bomb, and you can see it's a positive mass being propelled from the Earth because of the opposition of opposing forces, positive pushing positive away. The Earth will always attract electrons. That becomes no electrons whatsoever. So it goes, bing, get out of here. And it pulls all those electrons back. When it gets up high enough in the air, it's all set and it comes back. That's all. Hello, my friends. It's Roger once again. Today I'm going to go step by step through each one of these claims that I make, and I will show you literal, what I consider to be proof that the things I'm saying are true. Now, first of all, it's going to go from all the way from gravity to anti-gravity, from energy to nuclear energy to nuclear explosions. I'm going to explain every one of these interactions. Static electricity collects on you, lightning, the ionosphere, what is in space, what is in the vacuum of space. It's not a vacuum. I'm going to go over all this stuff. And there is no neutrons. There is no neutrons whatsoever. It's electron flooded. Everything is electron flooded. There are only electrons and protons. The protons attract enough electrons to them to become stable in a nuclear core, and then the incoming electrons to try to continue to attack that positiveness of the core. Because the core now has enough negatives attached to it, the new negatives trying to come in collect in regions surrounding it called orbitals. Let's look at that right now. This is number one I'm going to prove right now. All right, this is tractor beam magnets. It's on Latham's Crazy Machines. It's just, they think they're just toys. What are not toys, this is a very, very important thing that this guy is doing. He's making a core, a ring, and what he did was he made a ring of particles, which is the nuclear core is positive, surrounded by the negatives that attach to it, and they create enough negativeness that they create regions of orbitals surrounding it, and that is what causes this to get stuck, in a distance right away. That is the quantum distance. This is the nature of the nuclear core. When that shakes and these things vibrate and wiggle, they will be bumping against each other because there's going to be more than one, unless it's hydrogen, and they will create heat, and that is heat. And then as that heat increases, that electron will fly out of its orbit, and that is light. And that is what we see is the electrons we see is light. Are particles, they are not waves. They're magnetic particles just like that, and they flew off, and that's light. All right, so that's phase one. Okay, Roger, once again, Mount Fossil University. Today I'm going to go a little deeper into the story I did a couple days ago about Lisa Randall, who is one of the top physicists talking about matter and universes and different dimensions and all this business. Well, I claim that the basis of all of these things are built on the wrong premise, that the speed of light is constant, that they're not particles, they're some form of waves, that there's perturbation, there's no particles in space, that there's neutrons. I'm saying everything is wrong because the basis of everything was wrong. And I'm going to show you right now in actual physical experiments that I can prove to my feeling, and if you can prove me wrong, I'd like to see it, that all these things are true. I'm going to say that all matter contains only plus and minus charges. That I'm going to have a hard time showing you, but I think it's quite evident when you see what I'm claiming is electron flood. So I'm saying it's only electrons and protons. Neutrons, forget about it. The cores get flooded with electrons. So there's no neutrons. The electrons flood the positive core, and they gang up on it, and they create a negativity that creates orbitals for the more incoming. So the positiveness of the core will attract outside of its regions, outside of the additional electrons, outside into orbitals, depending upon the mass of the positiveness of the core. So that, and I'm saying that is the attractive force that keeps electrons in their orbitals. I'm going to show you that in a very simple toy tractor beam magnet that suspends the negative particle surrounding the positive core. Now, light can slow down and accelerate, and light is a particle. It fills space. They're electrons free in a vacuum of space, and it's quite obvious. They float around in our ionosphere. They're just negative particles all over the place up there. They collect on you, and I'm going to show you this. They are ether in our atmosphere right down here. There's a whole ton of extra electrons just floating around, wanting to collect on something, wanting to get to ground is their primary objective, because ground is a positive attractive source. Electrons flow to ground, and that's why they always say you have to ground things. The electrons will go there. That's the quickest place they want to go to, is ground. So we know electrons go to ground. We know they float around in the air because they collect on you as static, and you walk and you touch a water pipe, and it goes to ground. You see a spark. That's not a whole bunch of matter going. That's electrons jumping from you. Same thing with the electrons that come down in the form of lightning. That is nothing more than electrons. That's not all molecules just bumping into each other. That is electrons flowing through those molecules, an excess of electrons in the charge in the atmosphere, so negative that it says, I want to get down to ground, and I am negative enough now that I can jump through the air and overcome that resistance and hit the ground. So, now, I'm saying light is that particle, and it is a particle from the time it leaves the sun till the time it hits anything that it hits. And as it flows through space, it is a particle, it has a mass, it has a potential energy. When it collides with something, it concusses with it and creates a glow. And I am going to show you this, absolutely show it to you. I'm going to show it to you. And if you can put up a defense against this, I want to hear that defense. Now, so light can slow down. We know that. There's absolutely no question about that. And it can accelerate, and I can show you that, and it can do it simply. So let's go look at what I'm showing you, and then we'll go to the rest of this. This is pulsed red laser light from a very inexpensive red laser just flowing through the air. This is that same red laser, pulsed red laser, being accelerated. So I'm saying that light can be accelerated. It was red laser light, so it's accelerated. It's a particle. That beam was nothing more than this beam right here. And as it passes through the air, just like a jet fighter, it creates a shock wave. And that's what we saw in there. Now, this is stretched. You see that wave is pulled and stretched. That means that particle beam is accelerating. And as it accelerates, it's trying to force its way through this venturi. There's two steel drums here. They're pins. They stick straight down, and it creates a crevice to come through. They're like airplane wings, forcing the particles to concuss with each other into each other's regions and to create plasma. Plasma means that they're invading each other's territory. Every one of these particles is supposed to control a region surrounding it. It's called there's the hydrogen is the 21 centimeter line. And other ones have regions that surround huge regions. And when they are invaded by another particle, in this case the laser beam, they concuss and they glow. Now, what is going on here? This is a major glow, because the other ones are just sort of glowing and you're getting a little bit of ripple here. But once this explodes here, you get a reverse glow. You see that? That's called reverse EMF, electromagnetic force, electromotive force, whatever you want to call it. But it is concussing backwards because this is like a bomb exploding. So what do you see? You see dozens and dozens of waves going backwards. And those waves are concussing these little tiny white particles that are in the air. That is what we would call ether. Right? The ether is nothing more than free electrons. They are not part of molecules. They attach to water molecules primarily, and then as the air gets dry, they try to jump to anything that has moisture in it, such as a person and different fabrics. And then that person will touch ground, and then it will discharge, and you'll see a spark, a literal spark. And that is nothing, that's not matter going there. That's not a lightning. I mean, it's a lightning bolt. Same thing in a lightning bolt. It's electrons. That's all it is. It's electrons. They collected on you. These are the things. They are called ether. Where did these come from? They come from the sun. What happens at the sun? The sun shakes the molecules so violently that the orbiting electrons become so excited that they are thrown from the sun into the regions of space as negative particles of light. You don't see them because they're not concussing with anything. They are now in their expanded form, floating through air, through the space, the vacuum of space, and all the other guys are around them, and they're staying away from each other because they're all negative. They sort of push away gently because they have the room to do that. But when you force them like this, they do not have the room to do that. And then those regions compress. They concuss. You don't see the central electron. It just possesses a region. However, we did see the central electron as they left the accelerator and began to slow down. Fabulous shots here. I'll show you that. Just so you know, this is coming out of that accelerator. The accelerator is over here, and it's coming out. And now these things are all in disarray. Some of them are going across each other. As they do, they impact. You get different glows and hues, but they all want to turn down to their regular red, like we saw that original red flowing gentle wave. Now this is looking directly into the accelerator coming at us. All these little white filaments, I believe, are the electrons, and they are in an excited Cherenkov radiation form now, which is highly accelerated as it came through the Venturi. And these are the particle filaments, and they concuss with the unrestricted space, and then they create these fields, which are nothing more than the electrons that are the ether in the atmosphere polarizing and setting up these little dots. That is the particle, is the charged particle carrier. They call them bosons, and it's in the center here. You don't see it, but around that boson is all of these dots, which are the polarized particles, which are the electrons in my world, and it's called ether. Now, which is, they would call that a Higgs field, which I can go with that. So we got a boson and a Higgs boson. Now, here's where I get a problem. Because when we talk about frequencies, I know these are all going to turn back to red. They all want to be red. Now, how do they come through that thing and turn white as white can be? And then turn, these are different colors. Different colors means different frequencies. So I'm saying that's a different frequency than that, than that, than that. And that one there, I think, is spinning backwards because it's gathered its field into itself, where the other one's spinning in the right-hand rule, which is the rule. They have created a magnetic field, just like all particles do, if they spin the correct way. Now, the ones that spin backwards don't create magnetic fields, and they heat up like hell. And the same thing is happening with Venus. It spins backwards in our solar system, and the spin backwards reacts and pushes back against the ether that's in the wrong direction. It's supposed to slide off it on a right-hand spin. It doesn't. It gathers it up with a left-hand spin. It's like an anti-drill. Now, so what's bothering me about this? Well, here's what's bothering me about it. There's also going to turn red. How could they be these different frequencies and then turn back to red? Why do they do that? Why is the Fraunhofer lines an emission spectrum and an absorption spectrum? Why did the only thing that emits when you heat up these specific types of gases and molecules, they only emit certain frequencies, like a certain red, a green, a blue, let's say. And it's a specific, exact different, they call them nanometer ranges. It's a different, let's go like this. So one of them goes like this is a frequency, and one goes way long like that is a different frequency. One goes fast like that. Those are the frequencies. And why do some have different frequencies, different colors? That's a more compressed one. I think it's being compressed here and compressed here. So the space is being violated. It's purple, which is, or violet, whatever you want to call it, which is a higher energy than red or orange or magenta looking colors. Now, so why will that settle back down to become red again? It has started out at the same red particle. It changed to white. It's changing to these different frequencies. Now, to me, that's a frequency. That's what they say. It's a frequency. But I'm saying it's only a frequency because of its speed at this moment. So I think the speed is more important than this frequency, really. That's what creates these colors. And then once you get down to the correct speed, the gravity dictates, because it's pulling. That's when your frequencies stabilize and you get your red is always red and your blue is always blue. Because this is not supposed to happen this way. How does it come back to red once it jumps up to that high energy? What's that all about? It will end up coming back to that same frequency. And that's what happens in the Fraunhofer lines. It absorbs only that one frequency. Only that frequency. Everything else goes through it, just let it go. And it will emit only that same frequency. And all the other frequencies don't come out of it. You don't see them. I say they're there in very, very small amounts. And the reason these frequencies are in the areas that they become actually emitted or absorbed is because that is their resonance frequency. And I'll show you that in these salt experiments. Again, I'm going over territory I've covered many times, but I'm going to try to put it all together in one thing, because it's the rule of 8, and you're going to see it all over this resonance stuff. So it will only emit at that rule of 8, and it will only absorb at that rule of 8. The rest of the stuff can come and go. It appears to me. Now, that rule of 8 is strictly a vibration. And you'll see it, because it's all created by vibration. It's an experiment. I didn't do it. Somebody else did it. It's fabulous, and I'm going to show it to you. All right, this is Nikola Tesla. He said, if you want to find the secret of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, vibration. Without vibration, nothing happens. Nothing happens. So now, this is by Brush Pup, 11 million hits, heading up towards 12. Now, watch what happens here. They're going to take salt, and they're going to put it on this frequency resonator bed. So they're inducing vibrations in here. And here goes. Let me turn this down a little bit so it doesn't get too loud. Here goes. All right, now, what they're going to show, this hertz is vibration. Now, they start at a very low, and you'll see, okay, see the vibrating metal plate using tone gen. The first set pattern will be basically hydrogen and helium. They only have one single orbital that only has 2 electrons maximum. Then it goes into the rule of 8, which all the rest of them follow. And here goes. All right, so they're going to vibrate it. They get more and more complex, and you're going to see that fabulous. All right, so he's starting pretty low. And if you heard that, so now this is helium and hydrogen, has only one set of orbitals. Now they're going to go into where you're going to see the rule of 8 pick up almost every single time. See? 3, 6, 8. There's the rule of 8 at 1033 hertz. See, here's going to be 8 again. 3, 6, 8. Now, this is, and then you can follow these around. If you look around, they're going to be 8. Now, that's 1820. Now, in between these hertz ranges, see, there's another 2, 4, 6, 8. In between these ranges, there is not. They won't lock. They won't stabilize. There's your 8 again. Now, it goes up and up and up. I won't bother showing all of them, but you should go up and see. It's very cool. But even when you get way up here, you still have all of these patterns, these same patterns. And they get so exotic. But you get these same things, 6, 6, 8. It just happens all the time. And that is, it's called the octet rule, or the rule of 8. And it's what's called the valence electrons will always want to stabilize with 8. And that's why you see these, the noble gases and stuff like that. And then helium, of course, is stabilized because it has 2, and the maximum in its orbitals is 2. So they want to fill to the maximum, then they're stabilized, and then they don't. That's when they can't become destroyed. Really, I mean, that's their zone of stability is when they lock in at these patterns. And that's the number of electrons that are in the outer valence, as far as I'm concerned. Those are the electrons in the outer valence, and those are the particles that I've been showing. Mr. Roger, once again, going deeper into the atomic model and replacing it with an accurate atomic model and a new equation of energy. And I will go into this a little later, but I'm saying that there is no neutrons. Everything is electron flooded. Wherever there's positives, there will be enough negatives to go into it and flood it with negatives and make it a complete mass. And there is resonance values that will set up regions called the rule of 8, which are the regions surrounding the nuclear core. And these regions of 8, these are zones of 8, this rule of 8, dictates the stability of the matter. And I believe that the stability of the atoms is dictated by some governed literal intelligence. Because they're all the same. They're all made of the same bits. But some of them turn into gold, and some of them turn into copper, and some of them turn into oxygen, and some of them are hydrogen. Now why? Why would they just do this? There's some other form of literally intelligence going on. In my mind, that is what I see. It's Roger, Mud Fossil University, which I had to start my own university because Harvard University wouldn't listen to me. But I did see Dr. Lisa Randall, speaking of particle physics, and she is apparently high up on the ladder. And I just noticed this: dark matter and the dinosaurs. We think exactly alike, Dr. Randall. I would love to talk to you. So please watch this. I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to email. I'm going to call you, and I hope everybody else does too, because normally I'm not allowed in these circles. Like you and the Higgs discovery, I have that too. Oh my goodness. We are simpatico. Dr. Randall, I would love it if you would come up to Mud Fossil University, look around, see what you think. I have David Attenborough here, particle physics failures, as I'm speaking of. High-tech tracks of the gods. I have information that is being poo-pooed by universities. I think you may be the person that seems to have the interest, so you may please look at this. All right? I'd appreciate that. Maybe Charlie could interview both of us together. Who knows? But I think I have a lot to contribute here. And if you come up here, you're going to see that that's a fact.